and welcome back to the Jim Paisley podcast. Thanks for tuning in again. Today, my guest is Ted Jenkin, and this was a rich discussion on all things economy, asset classes, where things are headed through this crisis. And I really want to speed up my intros because I really want these shows to be about the guest and not about me talking about them. So I'll make this as quick as I can because the thing about Ted is Ted does a lot. He's a frequent contributor on CNN headline news, just CNN in general, CNBC. He's written a ton of pieces for the Wall Street Journal. The Atlanta Small Business TV show, he hosts that for CBS Atlanta. His own podcast is The Shrimp Tank. Think Shark Tank with slightly smaller investors. He's written 2 books, 21-Day Budget Cleanse and the 100 Smart Money Moves to Make Now. A little bit about Ted. He grew up in New Jersey, went to Boston College. He's married, he's got 3 kids, and lives just north of Atlanta. I sat down with Ted, and we talked about, like I said, what's trending in different economic sectors, his thoughts on what's about to grow, what's going to take off, and specifically, what about asset classes that are in serious trouble. He gets into all that. He doesn't disappoint. I hope you enjoy him. Here he is. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Ted Jenkin. So Ted Jenkin, welcome to the podcast. It means a lot that I was able to come to this studio. Usually I bring all my equipment, but here I am in this studio. We've got sound panels, we've got cameras, we've got microphones that look more expensive than mine, but I've still got my backup studio in my backpack. So, but anyway, it means a lot that you had me up here in your office. But thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, sure. Always fun to do a podcast and be in our studio is fun too, doing it in here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'd like to sort of go deep on a few things. I really want to talk a lot about the economy, stock markets, assets. What does this look like in this sort of shitstorm that we're in now? But before we go into that, I don't really know much about your story, and I'd like to know more about it, how you got to, I know you used to be sort of in the typical advisor model, and then one day you decided to build oXYGen Financial, but how did you get oXYGen to where it is now? Tell me about that story.
Yeah, I spent 17 years working for a Fortune 500 company, like many advisors do, one of the big boxes, and it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot of stuff, but I recognized one day that what the company wanted me to do and what I thought would be in the best interest of clients, those paths were not meeting. And many of the big companies, because they manufacture products, or you win trips to Cabo San Lucas if you sell enough business, or you get some sort of back-end pension, a lot of consumers don't really understand that most advisors cannot be a fiduciary and have a clear lens. So back in 2007, I was thinking to myself, one, I wanted to build a model where I could sort of act as the CFO for somebody's family finances. So they'd be the CEO, I'd be the CFO on almost a subscription model, like a gym membership. And I was also thinking to myself that nobody was serving the X and Y generation, that everyone wanted 65-year-old clients that had $2 million. And I thought, I'd rather work with younger clients that are my age. At that time, I was 38. And I would grow with them as they would become millionaires. So I took oXYGen, I added an O to it, and that's really how oXYGen came about. It was oXYGen, where we became the private CFO for the CEO, who was the CEO of their family finances. And that's how oXYGen, the genesis of oXYGen, happened in 2008.
2008. Okay.
Yes, it's 12 years now.
Yes. And what was that process like starting it?
It was brutal. It was brutal. The reason it was brutal is because I was a corporate guy, and of course, all corporate people think they know tons of shit, and they really don't. And what I mean by that is that they know about sales management, or they may know about operations, but when you start running a business, you have to basically be everything. You have to be general manager, you have to be dishwasher, you have to be server, you have to be everything. And so I didn't know how to write a policy manual. I didn't know anything about paying out payroll. I didn't have to do that when I worked for a Fortune 500 company. And so it took a year to really not only get the business up and running, but just think about actually being a business owner and what I had to do as an entrepreneur.
Is it kind of like starting a law firm where you can basically start it with absolutely nothing, a laptop, I guess. And
Oh,
you've
yeah.
and you've got your network, you've got your laptop, you've got your mental capital, I guess, your brain, and with I guess your ideal of where you want this thing to grow and go, and then how did you start it? Did you have any employees at first?
So when we started, there were a few people that left the old firm and came with us. So yeah, there were probably 3 employees that started with me, and then one of the vice presidents that worked for that Fortune 500 company left as well, and we got into the business in a partnership. And I said to myself when I started the company, I don't ever want to do anything traditional that a financial advisor firm would do in terms of the client experience and the marketing. I wanted to be very a-traditional. So it was the last time I said I would ever pay for 10 people's lunches at a Chinese restaurant and try and give them a sales pitch. So never again, never did it. And I also said I'm never going to wear a tie. That was actually one of the big things that I did. I have not worn a tie except for 2 funerals and 1 wedding since 2008. A lot of days I am like today. I'm in a sweat jacket and sweatpants. And honestly, if a client has $1 million and I'm not their guy because I have sweatpants on, great. I'm good with that. I really am, because if you're going to judge me by the color of my tie and the brand name on my suit, you're not my client.
That's right, man. Some tie racism. That's not cool.
Yeah. Well, I still have them in my closet. What's funny, man, is I still have them all in my closet. I have these Xenia ties and all these things when I was in the corporate world, and I'm like, man, is that really? Do you want my knowledge and do you want a relationship, or do you want to hire me because I'm going to give you some dog and pony show that I've got a suit and a few charts on what the stock market has done, and that's why you should give me your money?
You mentioned that I think earlier you were saying we were talking about taxes, and I guess you can sometimes advisors tend to be so focused on the stock market, long-term growth, things like that, but you sort of took an overall approach to everything. What are those approaches that appeal to people?
Well, the biggest thing you just mentioned in here, it's funny. I think, consumers are confused today. And what I mean by that is that if you go to hire a financial advisor, which is a really bastardized term. I mean, look, you got people that are in their basement with a notepad selling term insurance policies that call themselves financial advisors. But, you're either going to pay somebody for advice. You can pay somebody for asset management, but you need to get clear on what you're actually paying for. And I have always felt that the biggest expense by far for any household in America is income taxes. And so we always had a focus on doing comprehensive financial planning. But what we said to ourselves is we're going to be product agnostic. So I don't take any kickbacks. I don't manufacture any products. I don't win a trip to Tahiti. If I sell somebody's products, I always wanted to be focused on giving the best tax management advice that I could give. And that would be the way that we would really sort of win people's hearts. And so we've become really skilled at sophisticated tax planning and tax management strategies for business owners and high income earners. And that's really the core of where it separates us from a lot of firms out there.
I appreciate you saying that. I had a quick stint after graduating Georgia Tech. I worked for a large investment company. Rhymes with Slim Vesco. And
Still here.
Yeah, still here. I can't believe it. No. I remember they had changed their name to InvestCap very briefly, but I think because their fund performance was so bad in the early 2000s.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was the rumor anyway, between some of the employees in where I was working. But and I've known fund managers there, and the rumor was, and I don't know this for a fact, so I mean I'm not going to defame anybody or libel anyone, but that was sort of the problem with how a lot of their funds were managed. Is there were some of those things that you talk about, things you wanted to get away from,
right?
As far as incentives that might not necessarily have been in the investor's best interest.
Right. Yeah. And you look, you have every right as a consumer, as you should, is to challenge whoever it is that you're dealing with in our business and asking those questions. Are you a fiduciary? Do you win any trips? Does your company pay you any pension plans? Do you have wholesalers that pay for your golf at Eastlake or somewhere? And if any of those answers come up as yes, then that's a red flag for doing business, right?
Yeah, that doesn't really sit well, I guess. And that sort of gets me into, like I said, I fell out of love with the financial industry
Yeah.
back from my days. And I know a lot of advisors. Some of them I like, a lot I don't. A lot,
I know why.
yeah,
I understand that.
right. I mean, it's like a few weeks ago, I had a career prosecutor on, and I used to be a prosecutor as well, and I generally don't like prosecutors just because of their mentality: kill, convict at all costs. It just doesn't, it sort of doesn't correlate to my mindset. And sort of the same thing with financial advisors. So I said, well, if I ever got one on, it would have to be somebody that knows what they're talking about, that
Yeah.
actually, that we can sort of get down into these details about what's going on, the macro, the micro. So maybe that is sort of a good point to go into what's going on right
Sure.
now. Let me give you some numbers real quick, and I know you look at these probably every day. We have 11.1% unemployment, 33 million people unemployed,
Yeah.
2.5 million people still losing their job each week. College football, I don't know, man.
I saw the Big Ten said they're only doing conference games, so I'm sure
Right.
the SEC's not far behind, and the Ivy League said no altogether. So
That's right. Who knows what's going to happen with baseball, the NBA?
Right.
I look at industries across the board with this COVID thing, but yet I still see the stock market holding on. Yes, the economy is not reflective of the stock market. The stock market can sometimes be indicative of maybe what's to come. But if you could speak on where the hell we are right now,
Yeah.
what you think might happen. Obviously, none of this is advice. All the good disclaimers.
Sure.
But what the hell is going on right now, and where's this ship headed?
Well, there's a lot of parts to that question. So let's just talk about the fundamental part of what most people are thinking, which is probably what might happen to the stock market and, where is the economy headed overall. So, the big X factor in here is obviously the coronavirus, because nobody knows really how long the coronavirus will be around, and nobody really knows yet when we will truly have a vaccine that everybody can take. That being said, what we saw in here was the initial lockdown that happened in March had a massive teardown in the market like we've never seen before. It was unprecedented that we got to a bear market in 22 days, which it's not even close to as fast as a bear market as we've ever seen before. And then immediately after that, we had some of the best days in the best months in the S&P 500 than we've had since the 1930s. Which feels like an oxymoron. Like, how could things be so bad and then all of a sudden they turn so good? And the answer is really neither happened, right? It wasn't necessarily as bad as people were saying, and it's not as good as people are saying. Look, the reason why the coronavirus is such a big middle piece of this is that we won't, and we don't know the real damaging effects of the economy, and we probably won't know them, I don't think, till after this election. And let me compartmentalize this because it is complex.
Thank you.
Okay. First and foremost, let's look at unemployment. You mentioned unemployment's at 11.1% right now. It's actually higher in minority communities. For the African American and Latino communities, it's at some 15% right now. So it's even higher. But we have a big deal that's happening here, Jim, in just a couple weeks. This $600 of extended unemployment benefits is set to run out on July 31st. Some states, July 25th and July 26th. When that happens, the Congress had passed something called the HEROES Act, and that act basically said we'd extend those unemployment benefits until January 31st. But obviously we know we have a political football going on between the Democrats and Republicans right now, so the Senate will never sign off on that bill, the initial one. So there are several proposals now, one side saying, like Senator Portman, that we should do a $450 return to work bonus. Means like we'll pay you $450 a week for 26 weeks, but you have to work. Chuck Schumer has the Schumer-Wyden bill or proposal, and that proposal is let's start at $600, and if that 11.1% goes down by 1%, we'll trim that number from $600 to $500. If it goes down to 9%, we'll trim it to $400. So it would be a scaled down unemployment benefit extension relative to how fast the national unemployment numbers go down. What we know, Jim, that scares me is that if we do nothing and we have 20 to 30 million unemployed Americans, you're not going to have a moratorium on evictions forever. You're not going to allow people to put forbearance on their mortgages forever. And so those effects of seeing that, because there probably will be some propping up here of that unemployment benefit, we won't really see how well those numbers really shake out until 2021.
Yeah, that scares me when I start thinking about my friends that own exercise studio, yoga studios.
Yeah, they're in rough shape. It's rough.
Then I think about my friend who owns the Beacon in Atlanta, in Grant Park. When I think about his businesses not being able to make ends meet, I think about those strip malls. But then what's above that? What about the commercial banks, commercial debt?
So we've got two pieces to it, I think. First of all, in the stock market, I mean, you can put lipstick on a pig for a while, but eventually it's a pig. And, what I mean by that is that the markets are moved much more today by sentiment than they are by the actual fundamentals of stocks. We know this because when you look at a company like Tesla, who really just about hit $1,400 a share, and you're saying, who the hell would buy a company for $250 billion that doesn't make any money? That seems insane. But, Jim, here's the thing. When the Fed suppresses interest rates to the point where you're getting zero at the bank, what it does is it causes forced behavior. It either forces you to consume or it forces you to take the money out of the bank and invest it somewhere else. And that's what I mean when I say propping up the stock market. If I depress interest rates to zero or I even go to negative interest rates, basically all I'm forcing you to do is get your money out of the bank. I either want you to spend it or invest it. And that's why you're seeing real estate continuing to hold okay. You're seeing the stock market hitting record highs in areas like the NASDAQ because money has to get pushed somewhere because little old retiree can't retire on a 0.5% interest rate in the bank. Now, the one long-term effect I'm really worried about is commercial real estate, because if the coronavirus persists, and that's why I said this is the X factor, and people end up working 1 or 2 out of 5 workers at home permanently, we're going to have a massive vacuum in the commercial real estate space here, not only in Atlanta, but in big cities like New York, San Francisco, and Chicago.
That's right. What happens to all those Class A skyscrapers?
Tell you what, it could be the opportune time to build affordable housing. I don't know if they'll do that.
Wow.
My thought process would be that we have a dearth of affordable housing in cities and take some of those skyscrapers and try to convert them. But look, you can't run a skyscraper at 50% occupancy, just like you can't run a restaurant at 25% capacity. It just doesn't work.
One of the people I follow publicly is Ray Dalio. And
brilliant guy.
Yeah, seems extraordinarily brilliant. And you touched on something with central banks and interest rates, something that actually he mentioned the other day or the other week, and that is that we don't really have free markets anymore. We have, like you said, this forced consumer behavior or this forced behavior because of whether it's fiscal policy or monetary policy. And what I see him saying scares the shit out of me, because he's like, he mentions things like the D word, depression. He's not the R word,
Right.
but New World Order. And, we have a big advantage. The United States that we are the reserve currency, so we have a little more,
Right.
I think, leeway with our with what we do with interest rates and that monetary policy. But God, he even says things like about the bond markets imploding, and I'm like, okay, what? Like, what is? And then he's asked, what does this look like? And he doesn't speak really much on specifics, but
Right. But that's part why you've seen, gold has basically hit another all-time high this
Is it
week.
really?
Yeah, it crossed over
yeah.
$1,800 a share. And,
Wow.
Some people are saying, hey, look, if paper's worth nothing, which it kind of is, then what's worth something? Maybe precious metals. It's also why the Bitcoin, although it's still way too early to say how all that will shake out, I think that got some upswing because eventually people said, look, if paper's worth nothing, maybe a universal currency like a Bitcoin, maybe it won't be the Bitcoin, is something that is worthwhile to look at.
What other industries do you see having problems?
So we talked about. I'll say something here. I'm gonna make a prediction, and I could
love predictions.
I could be wrong on here. I think within 10 years that the NASDAQ market will be bigger than the Dow. That's my prediction. The Dow, let's say, trades at 27,000, 26,000 right now. The NASDAQ just crossed 10,000, and it's only a matter of time, in my opinion. And if you're a buy and hold investor, although I don't know your specific situation, so you should always talk to somebody before you do this, that the buy and hold index to hold is the NASDAQ. And
Why is that?
the reason I say this is that if you think about every industry, just about, there is a massive technology solution that's driving that industry. So we're seeing it in, let's just take healthcare. We know that telemedicine was growing. The coronavirus just accelerated the curve on telemedicine. And there's no question about it that telemedicine is probably going to be the biggest driver of healthcare over the next 5 years. If you think about how many people work from home, you can't work from home today without having 5G and broadband. I mean, all of that, the piping in America, let me say it this way, has to get faster, as will cybersecurity, because you're going to have more risk of more people working at home. If you think about automobiles, people talk about autonomous driving, and I don't know how long it will take to get there, but that's an inevitability. It's not political. It's not Democrat or Republican. These are inevitabilities. 10 years ago, if the coronavirus happened, we would have imploded way worse because we couldn't have done Zoom or Cisco WebEx or things like that. Skyping somebody was near impossible, right? So you couldn't do what you did today. So I'm convinced that your mom's blue chip and your dad's blue chip companies, the GEs, the Mercks, the Pfizers, it's not that they're bad companies, but they don't have the growth accelerators that you're seeing in the Amazons and the Microsofts and the new blue chips of tomorrow. This is my opinion.
No, I can totally see that. The NASDAQ, of course, being tech heavy.
Totally
Right,
tech heavy. Yeah. I mean, that's, everything is technology. If the coronavirus causes more robotics or more touchless entryways and things like that, everyone's cutting the cord now. You're seeing people have home security systems where, you can hear your neighbor talk from 30 feet away from your house. The technology is integrated into every facet of our life right now.
Yeah. I wonder what the next 2 years look like, though, with, like you said, there's a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures right now, but that can't last forever. How does this not become another 2008 or possibly worse?
Well, they're different. They're different. In 2008, it was a housing crisis that really caused the collapse, and it was largely due to the banks lending out money to people they shouldn't have loaned money out to, right? So somebody that had a $500,000 mortgage, and you go, you don't make any income? No problem. We'll just give you $500,000. That caused a problem. This was a health-related crisis that is causing this financial crisis. And I do believe 2021 is going to be difficult. I think the Fed, especially while Trump's in there, is going to do everything they can to keep the stock market propped up, because if he tries to get reelected, which I think he will, try to get reelected, his platform is the stock market. It is the economy. So he's not going to get unemployment back from 11% to 3.5% in 4 months. You're not going to turn the Queen Elizabeth in a bathtub, but he is going to try to do everything he can to prop the stock market. And I do think the Fed, even though it's supposed to be completely independent, you can't say that they aren't getting pressure from Trump. So I don't think you'll see massive corrections until the election is done. And then after that, then we'll see how it shakes out. And like I said, the bad news is around foreclosures and how many small businesses go out of business. After all the PPP money has propped the businesses up for a while, eventually reality sets in, and I think you're going to see a lot of businesses go out of business. Big ones you're seeing now, like Brooks Brothers went out this week. Pier 1 went out. Brooks Brothers has been around since 1818.
Wow.
Right?
Well, I guess people don't need suits anymore, right? They're not going to work.
Not me.
Right? Oh man, sign of the culture.
But I think 2021, Jim's, gonna be tough. I do. I think we're gonna see a lot of ugly news that whether it's Trump or it's Biden, they're both gonna have to deal with the real reality of a lot of people out of work and struggling.
Yeah, I do feel like stock market is very emotional, very sentimental right now, but that can only last so long, given what's actually going on.
And if Biden gets in, and I don't really care about the politics. I just think about how it's going to affect my client's wallet. If he raises corporate tax immediately, 8, 9, 10%, if he raises the capital gains tax, which would be the big one of 39.6%, because the top is 20 now, that could cause people to say, I don't want to be in the stock market. But For now, money's always has to chase something, and it's chasing equities in general right now because you can't make any money in cash or fixed income. It's difficult.
Tell me real quick what your ideal client is, or what your not your ideal, but your average client. What do they look like?
Yeah, I think we've got two sleeves of clients at oXYGen. One is what I would call to be the small business owner, and I don't think I'm the PPP definition of small business owner. I'd say, we're really with companies that have 5 to 100 employees. We're really skilled not only at taxes, but designing the right corporate benefits for them and really helping the owner figure out how to maximize the P&Ls in the business and grow the business. And then I would say on the individual side, I would just call it the C-suite. It's somebody who's a high-end salesperson, somebody who's a VP level at a corporation, and they're making a lot of W-2, but they're getting killed in taxes. And we don't really go for the retiree market. We're as good as anybody, I think, in that Gen X, Gen Y market. So now you think about people that are really in that late 30s to mid 50s. Late 50s, we're really, really good in that market.
Let's talk about lawyers. This is a pretty lawyer-heavy podcast, and most of my topics center around health, business, and the law. But my default, I'm fascinated with the law. Obviously, it's my career. But the lawyers, I've read The Millionaire Next Door. Lawyers, in many ways, can seem like doctors. A lot of debt. What sort of problems do you see lawyers doing a lot with their finances, with how they manage things?
Yeah, it's very interesting. We see a lot of solo practitioners, as we do, small firms that might have one partner. And I think the good things a lot of lawyers do is they try to get owner-occupied real estate when they can get it, which I tend to favor that unless you're in such a high growth phase, that you're going to outstrip your space. But I've always seen that as the best investment if you believe in your practice. As an example, as a lawyer, if you can own the real estate and you're going to be in practice for the next 20 or 30 years, it'll be great. The one big mistake, I think, is that a lot of lawyers, it's interesting, many of them don't have a will, which is interesting being attorneys, and many of them don't really have succession plans or buy-sell agreements, nor do they think about the value of their business. It's a very... when a partner buys into a practice, it's very different than somebody just buying into a regular business. And I don't think enough attorneys look at that. And, in general, where they do act like doctors is a lot of attorneys sometimes think they know more than they really do. And that can cause them to get swayed by buying fancy investments, somebody's buddies told you about some real estate deal that you're going to make 21% IRR, and it turns out to be no RR. It's you don't make any money. So, but in general, it's just interesting to see great practitioners. They totally are. A lot of them are good at marketing. I find they'll spend money to do it, but not on that legal side of what you think you'd have with succession planning and estate planning.
What about as far as, I guess, you talked about maximizing profits for small business owners, and I guess the lawyers, as far as business-wise, what good do you see them doing? What bad sort of trends do you see with lawyers?
Yeah, like I said, I think, a lot of law firms that I see seem to have a grip around marketing, even though buying keywords is tremendously expensive, especially in the PI space. Trying to figure out how to get your name out there is difficult, which is why I see how it's battled into a spending game. Attorneys of a lot, there are a lot of professional services firms that I work with where owners are cheap. I don't think attorneys are cheap at all. A lot of attorneys actually will spend money on resources. So especially when it comes to staff and stuff like that, they seem to be pretty good at staffing it up. But a lot of attorneys that I sit with don't really know their P&L. That's the interesting part. Like I don't find a lot of attorneys I talk to run a regular monthly P&L, really closely look at the margins in their business, and they don't do forecasting at all. Which means saying, like, if I had a firm that did $1 million of revenue or $2 million of revenue and it net out $1 million, what's my forecast for all the expense lines in 2021? And if I'm going to grow revenue and I want to grow top line revenue by 30%, what's going to be either my investment or my strategy to get there. So not a lot of business plans either, interestingly enough. I'll ask some attorneys, what's the business plan look like? It's like grow. Okay, well that's a word. It's not a business plan, but I don't see that as much.
You've got me. My wife, she looks at. I guess we go over our finances every quarter together. We go over.
That's big.
And we look at forecasting and that sort of thing. We do that as a family, and I wish I was as good at that at forecasting with my law firm. Which should be the other way around. You should be better at the law firm. So you get me right now. I'm like, okay, put on the note, forecast the next 6 months. I'll go do it. No, but it's funny. One of those things I enjoy doing is I enjoy doing my own bookkeeping and accounting.
Do you?
I love it.
Your QuickBooks?
Yes, and it's just one of those things where I find that if I do it, then it'll keep me focused in it longer. I'll be more in tune with everything as opposed to if I totally delegate it, then I'll just sort of forget about it. It won't mean as much to me.
Right.
So, but let's talk about trends. And first, maybe we can touch on the law. In one of your videos, I sort of stalked you on Facebook a little bit. One of your videos, you talked about mega trends, and you touched on this earlier, talking about technology. But do you see any trends with law? I mean, you talked about self-driving cars, and I think about personal injury lawyers who depend on car wrecks. Self-driving cars most likely will not get nearly as many wrecks as humans do.
Right.
So, what other trends do you see maybe happening in legal with law firm owners in the next 10 years?
It's really interesting to me because, funny enough, I tried to set up and see if I could get myself to own a law firm many moons ago. And then I realized quickly that if you're not a lawyer, which is interesting to me, I guess maybe with the exception of the District of Columbia, which I don't quite understand fully, but every other state, if you're not a lawyer, you can't rev share, you can't be part of a law firm. And I will give it up to lawyers because I know it's lawyers listening to this podcast. You're all the smartest people that I know, because to have a profession where it's kind of like, if you're not actually a professional that has a JD, you can't own one of these law firms. But I do think that lawyers would be naive to think that the day of reckoning is not going to come where a technology solution, y'all write the laws, so somewhere the laws would have to change, that there are going to be technology solutions that might drive your prices down. And, Jim, I'm in a business where 25 years ago, we sold, 7% commissionable mutual funds, and or 8% commissionable mutual funds, and they were called A-share mutual funds. And eventually now, I don't know anybody who sells commissionable mutual funds, and even advisors that charge a fee. If the fee they charge a client is 1%, you'd be naive to think that the computers aren't smarter than you. And eventually somebody like you is going to come to me and say, Ted, why am I paying you 1% when I can get a computer model that's honestly faster, smarter, and better for 25 basis points? So my whole point is that it's naive to think there isn't going to be a technology solution that isn't going to drive price down unless you figure out an alternative way to create value. And so, Jim, we have to think about that in our business. And I think attorneys need to be thinking that, I'm not talking about a LegalZoom. That was an example, or a Rocket Lawyer. But there are going to be other ones like that evolve here.
I totally agree. I was having this conversation with another injury attorney, and we totally believe, or in agreement, that in 5 to 10 years, our business, it's already taken a hit because of COVID, because nobody's on the road.
Nobody's driving.
And so if more people are staying home, and 2, 3, and 5 people are working from home now, then that's obviously going to have a drastic impact. Talk briefly, and then I want to get into some other topics, but on the other mega trends that you see to invest in the economy.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I think the biggest one we're seeing that you mentioned is everything that surrounds the work from home person. And, we talked about technology, but I don't want to name stocks in here, but I would say that if you just put your lens on for a second,
let's hear some stock picks. Let's go.
There are companies that are out there, and again, I don't know your specific situation, right? So I can't say these are right for you or not. But think about how well Amazon has done. So everybody, I'm not saying everybody owns Amazon, but there are a lot of people that have Amazon in their portfolio just because. And it's funny, when that was at $1,500 a share, people said, crazy price. Who's going to pay $1,500 until a year later that it's at $3,000? And I think yesterday it closed at $3,150. But think about how many companies are going to give people a small stipend, whether they work at home or not, to improve their home office. Eli Lilly is a great example of a company that just gave everybody in their company $1,200 to improve their home office. Now, if you have that cash and it's designed to improve your home office, where are you going to spend it? So think about your technology solutions. Think about what's not Amazon, like a Wayfair, that's not nearly as high as price, but deals in home furnishings. Think about your local companies here like Home Depot and Lowe's. All that type of stuff, people are going to be spending money there to improve their home office. So there's no question in my mind that's going to happen. I mentioned telemedicine. Teladoc is probably the biggest one right now, but you're going to see an onslaught of companies that get involved in telemedicine for sure. Look, we got to cut healthcare costs anyway. And it's the reason why you're also going to see massive infrastructure investment in 5G and broadband, because the last thing you want is to have a telemedicine meeting with your doctor, and in the middle of it, it says internet connection unstable. What'd you say, Doc? I couldn't hear you while my internet went in and out. You don't want to have that. So there are actually funds out there that are work from home funds, ticker symbol WFH. Not saying you have to buy it. Where you get about 50 or 60 companies if you don't want to buy one. There's a fund called 5G, FIVG, if you just want to own 5G. And that may be an easier way if you're nervous and saying, I don't have the time to actually go pick those stocks. I also think you're going to see gaming continue to explode. There's more than 80 schools now that are offering varsity scholarships in e-gaming, which I know sounds...
Are you serious?
Oh, I'm deadly serious. Yeah, yeah. 80 colleges and universities. And look, I've got 2 daughters and a son, and my son, I don't want to say I beat on him physically. I beat on him for the fact that he's playing Fortnite, all the time with his buddies and his pals. But the truth is that e-gaming is exploding like crazy. So there's an e-gaming fund called ESPO, ESPO, if you believe that that's going to be a trend as well. So, and consider this, we were saying, I don't know how long the COVID will last. And of course, a lot of you want your kids to play sports and stuff like that. But while they're not, what are they going to be doing? So, so I also think that you're going to see a trend over time to, and I mentioned this about affordable housing, but I think you're going to see more smaller urban building, more affordable urban building that's going to happen. Look, nobody poor lives in San Francisco anymore because you can't. And the cities don't work well when you've basically gets 100% yuppified. It's not going to work well. So I think you're going to see that as well. But all that's coming, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you think the next 3 years of residential real estate look like?
As long as interest rates are low and as long as you've got some job stability, it's going to be fine. What I would do as a real estate investor now, again, just Ted's opinion here, is that I think you're going to see a flight of many of these home workers out of the large metropolitan cities, not necessarily Atlanta per se, and moving to no state income tax states in more rural areas.
It's a very specialized prediction, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, let me give you an example here because we're close. Like, if you didn't have to live in New York and you wanted to live in Tennessee because it's a zero state tax state, Chattanooga is a good example of a great city. I mean, you're 2 hours from Nashville, 2 hours from Atlanta. You still have airport, and you pay zero income tax, earning the same income that you would have living in a studio in Manhattan. So Texas, Nevada, you're going to see Tennessee. I mentioned Florida. I think Wyoming will be a big state as well, by the way, over time. Wyoming's one of those zero state taxes that everyone passes over. But those are some of the big ones. I don't see people moving to Washington per se and Alaska. Why? But I think you're going to see that.
Yeah, man, this is rich. Like I said, I want to talk to somebody that would give me real predictions, real trends and stuff. So that's good
an interesting
stuff.
One, isn't it?
It really is, absolutely. Especially as the work from home model grows, which I think there's no other way. But let's get into your other ventures, and then especially how that relates to marketing. But what other ventures are you involved in? Because I think on your social media, I see a few other things associated with it. Why do you do this? What's next for you? What's going on?
Yeah, the two main businesses I own is obviously oXYGen I've had, and I own a social media company called HyperChat Social. And that was actually crazy enough when you think about being an entrepreneur. The way that company got started is I had other financial advisors, which, like you, I don't like many of them, but there's some that I do like.
Sure.
And the ones that I liked, they had asked me if I could help them out with their marketing. And I said, I don't want to be like a coach. I mean, dude, I'm past that. And they're like, well, why don't you just we'll hire you and you'll just do the marketing. And at first I thought to myself, why would I give my competitors any bit of what I know and what's taken me time to develop and learn? And then I thought, why not?
Right.
What am I going to get? 8 million clients at oXYGen? There's plenty of clients to go around. So I started with other cities, and I started doing their social media content, some of their videos, their digital marketing on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then before you knew it, we got 1,000 financial advisors that we're doing the marketing for across the country.
Really?
Yeah.
And then that's HyperChat Social.
It is. Now, we do other
Okay.
businesses, but, the real specialty is financial advisors. But to translate it into other businesses like attorneys or CPAs or restaurant owners, I mean, it's easy enough once you learn the concepts. Every business is a little bit different, but that is what that business. I have 15 employees in that business now, and it came out of nothing. So I like being involved in businesses. People sometimes would ask me what I collect, and I say LLCs. Because I'm probably have 11 or 12 different LLCs of things that I'm involved in, but those are the two core businesses.
Okay, let's get into Ted Jenkins' head a little bit.
Bad news.
Yeah,
Bad
I know.
idea.
15.
You like that?
Yeah,
You like that, Maynard?
That's right. That's right. Collect LLCs. You said 11 of them.
Yeah.
You got HyperChat Social CEO
Yep.
of it. You've got 1,500 advisors subscribing to this.
Yeah.
That's what drives that. Is that something you were born with? What was your growing up like?
Yeah.
What do you think created this monster, Ted
Well, I know some of it and some of it I don't. The piece that I do know is that, unfortunately my father died right before I went to college. And it's what got me into the financial services business is that my mom was a 5th grade school teacher. And, I never asked my parents about their money at all. But when my dad died, I said, hey, Mom, you're going to be all right. And she's like, oh, my God. She's like, your father left me in a mess.
Oh.
Left her with $100,000 of credit card debt. He had no life insurance. He had no 401k. The only thing my mom had going for her is she was 15 years into getting a pension if she taught for 30 years. So I said, look, Ma, I was about ready to go to Boston College, which is where I graduated. And I said, listen, Mom, I just stay home and I'll get a job here locally in New Jersey. And, I won't go to school. And my mom said, no, go to school, figure it out, do something good with your life. And I didn't know it would be financial planning per se, but I always liked teaching. I loved it because my mom's a teacher, and I greatly respect my mother. And, that's what got me into that business of financial advising is I didn't want to see another family go through what my family went through. And then I never knew I would love entrepreneurship so much until I started this thing. And I'm addicted to it. It's like a drug. And so I'm driven by building things. I love building things. I love creating things. I love helping people create things. And so, at this point, money is not the driver. I could retire tomorrow and it wouldn't matter, financially speaking. But for me, I would never retire. People, if you meet anybody who knows me, they would laugh if me and the word retirement came up in the same thing because I still work 7 days a week. I
Yeah.
still work every day.
Wow. I guess that means you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's usually.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love creating stuff. The next thing that we're up to is that we're going to launch a YouTube channel here called What Ted Says. And we got a logo with it, and basically it's going to be around personal finance hacks that I've learned over 30 years, entrepreneurship tips, social media hacks that I've learned, all sorts of good ones, and then just some fun shit.
And tell me the name of that channel again.
It's called What Ted Says.
What Ted Says. Okay.
And that is going to be so awesome, because one of the funniest things I'll tell people here is that one of my favorite characters growing up was Andy Rooney. And I love seeing Andy Rooney. I don't know much about 60 Minutes, but Andy Rooney's cracked me up. So I created an alter ego character called Andy Gloomy. And I've done probably 4 or 5 segments already. I've got the full wig and everything. And
so you're impersonating.
I'm impersonating Andy Rooney.
That's cute.
Remember when you were 5?
That's pretty good.
No, it's with the whole wig and everything. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. But I just want to have some fun too, because I want people to, know more about just me. I mean, I'm a totally wide open book, and I say what I say, and it is what it is.
You said entrepreneurship was like a drug.
Yeah.
What does your typical day look like? What time do you get up? Do you have any specialized routines?
I do, yeah. I'm actually extremely regimented. I've always been a big fan that whatever the calendar tells me to do, I'll do it, and if it doesn't, I won't. It's that simple. And so I am called a no white space guy. Like what I mean by that is I don't like white space in my calendar, or people would just look at it as blank space, And so typically I'll get up at 6. I'd say 6 days a week I'll work out for an hour. They vary, the workouts on what I do. And then basically, shower. And I'm an intermittent faster, so I almost never eat breakfast. I know some of you may think it's terrible. It works for me. And I'm usually a 1 or 2 cups of coffee guy in the morning. And it takes me through lunch, and then and I don't stop. I mean, I will go from 8 in the morning usually, or 7:30 until 7, and then I'll eat at home, and then I usually open my computer back up at night. I don't watch a lot of TV.
Yeah,
hardly at all.
Well, I mean, your choices on TV are dramatic programs or news, and news is
it's just no value in it, and even so, I mean. There may be a few shows that I'll watch here and there, but it's few and far between. I like reading and spending my time learning and thinking about other things I could develop.
You mentioned working out. You work out for 1 hour every morning.
Yeah.
6 days a week, 7 days a week?
It could be 7 sometimes. Sometimes I'll take a rest for a day, midweek usually, not on the weekends. But and sometimes they're cardio. Usually it's all high intensity stuff.
Yeah. Any meditation?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't meditate at all. But I'm usually in bed almost always by 11 o'clock. It's funny. It's not like I don't mind drinking, but I rarely drink now. Like, I mean, if I was out with somebody and we had like somebody was on here and we were having a steak dinner, I might have a glass of wine or something, but I don't go home and drink and stuff like that. I'm so fired up by like just doing this stuff. It's all I need.
Yeah. I'm glad you touched on the drinking thing. It's not something I often ask people, especially lawyers. It's sometimes you don't want to go into that, but
I just don't like it. I used to like it. It's not like one of those things like I wasn't like, born again and then all of a sudden I don't drink. I would drink if my wife and I go out with another couple, I'll have a cocktail, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go home and pour a Crown Royal or something and I just don't enjoy it.
Yeah. Give me, those are pretty good. I think routines, and I think most successful people is from the Tim Ferriss podcast, whatever they have those morning rituals. And I think whether it's working out, whether it's you were at the Game Changers conference where you spoke for 30 minutes or an hour on taxes, which I thought was the most comprehensive, interesting tax discussion I had heard. But Hal Elrod also spoke of that. He spoke about his morning routine, his miracle morning, where he does 6 things and included all these things. I tried to do that. If I did all 6 of those effectively, would. It would be 10 a.m.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, but I think just working out, just do one thing in the morning, getting up early. I think that's really where it starts, is just getting up early. But We don't have a lot of time here left, but marketing. I sort of did a search on podcasts for you, and a lot of things I hear you talking about, and of course with HyperChat Social, with
Yeah.
the YouTube channel, you're just like this. It seems like it just comes naturally to you. Where did you get all these marketing ideas? You're very active on social media. What inspired all this?
Yeah, so when I opened the firm, I thought to myself that I don't ever want to do push marketing. And I define push marketing as the dinner seminars, the lunch and learns, and honestly, I've networked with a lot of attorneys too over time, and I don't want to know how many wills and trust I threw out to people all these years. And how many I got back, I'd say I could count on one hand. And so I'm like, do I really want to go out and have lunch and we all love each other and I'm going to refer you and you're going to refer me? It's a very laborious, time-intensive process. And I thought two things back in '08, and I still think the same things today. They're relatively the same. One is I would rather figure out a mousetrap on how I could get people to find me and then get them to want to convert to do something, get an ebook, take an appointment without me having to talk to them. And two, on the long tail marketing, I thought back then, and I think it more today, that being in the media, whether it be social media, regular media, or both, is powerful because people are highly influenced by what they see and what they read. And so, and I think it more today, so I push out a crap load of content that I view as long tail ROI that, you might see 100 of my videos and never give me a call. And then one day you're like, you know what, I'm tired of who I have. I'm going to give Ted a shot or get a second opinion. And it helps when you try to scale up in my business to a higher clientele. Like the fact that I do CNN or headline news now, it doesn't necessarily make the phone ring off the hook every day, but I can compete with a $10 million client, whereas most financial advisors will never touch a $10 million client because they simply don't have the clout to do it. They may be smart enough, they just don't have the clout to do it. And that's why Goldman Sachs and Credit Suisse and some of these big firms, they just have that cachet, and it's why clients do business there. So I'm a big fan that if you really study digitized marketing and social media, you may not see an immediacy of results tomorrow, but you have to think about what you'd rather be doing over time. And I'd rather be sitting and waiting and building funnels for people to convert through.
What was the most effective marketing thing, whether social media, whether it was YouTube? When you were getting started, what was your most effective marketing tool?
So initially, back in '08, it was the blog, because I was one of the first personal finance bloggers that are out there. I think I've written 2,000 blogs. Oddly enough, my most trafficked blog that gets 500,000 views a month is "What should I give for a bar mitzvah gift?" I don't know why, but I'm the foremost expert now on bar mitzvah gifts. It is damn funny, but it speaks to the point that you don't know what people are going to read and what they aren't. And then I became super skilled at LinkedIn marketing. And there's a piping software out there for everyone called DuckSoup, DuxSoup. I'll make sure I get Jim my video on it, and you can see it. I'll get you the video on it. And it's called DuxSoup, and it's a piece of piping where I can serve up 500 people a day, not just a connection, like a get to know me, but I can actually serve them a sales pitch without having to pay LinkedIn. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been doing it for 5 years. It's been great.
So many, God bless, we're almost out of time here. We, if somebody is getting started, whether it's a law firm, whether it's a financial advisor, what would you recommend they do right now, today, to expand their marketing, to reach more people?
Yeah, I think the best thing is on the long tail ROI is set up a content calendar. And even if you have an iPhone, and for, $49, you can buy something called Lume Cube, which provides enough lighting on your iPhone, and just start shooting videos. You don't need a super big studio. Like the studio here, it's not, it's great. Our Tyler's done a great job building our studio, but you don't need to have a fancy schmancy studio to get this done. And just start putting out videos about basic content of what you do or topics that are interesting. and then use something called Subtitle. Not subtitle, it's called Subtitle, which is the easiest way to subtitle your videos because a lot of people have ADD and they'll half watch the video and read it sometimes. And so that'll work. And then 2 is I'd use that duck soup and initially just get connection requests. Get your LinkedIn base up to 10,000 people so you can start marketing them. You know, once you have the list, you can start marketing to your first degree connections, which nobody does. I don't know why. And that's, you know, we're heavy marketers that way.
Sounds like we could have easily done a podcast just solely on marketing, but and I'm so glad you touched on Subtitle because I wanted to ask you, how did you get your Facebook videos captioned?
Subtitle.
So how does it work? You download the app into your video, or you?
I believe it
upload
works in
video?
conjunction. Tyler could tell you, but I think it works in conjunction with Final Cut Pro, and then you're able to just overlay the titling on the video.
Okay, excellent. Well, we are out of time. We got to land this plane. So I will say thank you. This has been so much information. Drinking from a fire hose, absolutely. And I think maybe in 6 months, if I could get you back on, we could talk about where we are in 6 months.
Love
and
it.
how we made it that far.
Maybe I'll be wrong.
And then also touch more on these marketing ideas. But I am going to go address my forecasting and my content calendar. I'm going to go do those right now. But Ted Jenkin, thank you so much. Where can people find out? You're all over the place, but where can people find out the most about you or get in touch with you?
Easiest 2 things to do is just go to oxygenfinancial.com if you want ebooks or downloads on any of this stuff. We'll send them out. Or go to YouTube and just go to What Ted Says. We're launching it out in a couple of weeks, and follow that. And I'm going to give you all kinds of great content on there.
Awesome. Ted, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.